Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Paul Mescal, a Gotham Award nominee and Independent Spirit Award nominee for his performance in the new drama Aftersun, which is in theaters now, and it's a great film. Paul, I read an interview with you. You said you enjoyed doing the detective work of creating a character, and here obviously you're starting with a character that's based, at least in part, on Charlotte Wells' father, and so I guess when you're creating a character, where do you start then in your conversation with Charlotte, and how your own view of the character versus like her view of the character, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that, regardless of how personal it is to a director in terms of where it's being drawn from, I think the process of kind of sniffing around the background and the kind of motivations or the kind of interrogating the behavior is pretty much the same, or so far it's been the same. And I think with Aftersun, the challenge is or I perceive the challenge to be that it's like you've got to really trust the kind of the fact that there's not a lot of clues. There's enough and they're substantial, but you're never going to be satiated by having enough information, which I think is actually the power of the film. But yeah, so it was a matter of kind of going off a set of hunches, early days in prep, and then Charlotte was just so good at kind of letting me, like, I would say that this is kind of what I'm thinking in this ballpark, and for the most part she was always like, yeah, that's where I feel like it should be landing in. So there was a lot of creative freedom sent my way from Charlotte, which I'm very grateful for, you know.
Yeah. Was there one, a lot of things that I want to go back to, but was there one thing, I guess, when you're reading the script that stood out to you as something that you would latch onto to play Callum and stuff?
One of the moments that sticks out to me, like straight off the bat, is when he spits in the mirror, because I think that's one of the first kind of moments when he's, I think, pretty emotionally brutal with himself. And I was like, whoa, that, like, I remember reading it and kind of being like, the character that I thought he was changed totally in that moment. Because like I was trying to imagine what it would take to hear your daughter talk about a form of depression and to feel like you were giving that to her, and for that to then generate a response where you look at yourself in the mirror and you spit at yourself. I just thought was like, whoa, the wheels have turned further than I thought. And this was on a first read, so I was like, this is all I just found it really meaty and interesting and kind of unexplained.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the great, like you said, it's one of the great things about the movie is it's very much a show, don't tell, right? So it's like and that puts so much pressure, I think, on you and Frankie as well, because you guys are just so, like, you're not saying a lot, but you have to convey so many emotions and different feelings. And I guess for you as an, like, how do you, like, at the simplest thing would be, how do you do that? But I guess, like, how much of that, it's just like, it's so compelling and you really do convey so many things. Are you like, I mean, do you do a lot of rehearsals? Like, how do you do this? Like, especially in these scenes where like there is so much silence or things not being said, like, how do you prepare for those kind of scenes?
Like I feel like there was two distinct rhythms on set. There was the rhythm that was present when Frankie was filming, and then there was the rhythm when Frankie wasn't filming, just because of the kind of the boring part of like working with a child. The hours are really restrictive, so you're moving at a quick pace. We're not really rehearsing a lot, but we're obviously rehearsing because the script wasn't shared with Frankie off the bat. It was like there was a discussion around the story, so we would rehearse quite quickly and then shoot pretty quickly. But then there was a very distinct shift when, say, Callum's by himself. We actually had a lot of time to film those things. And I loved that. I loved being able to kind of juggle between those two rhythms, which I think is like feeds into what Callum was having to do on that holiday as well. Like when the filming process matches up with what the character's internal rhythm is, it's like a little gift.
Yeah. You have a great, you mentioned how it's like so much of like you going through like the things the Callum is, I guess, or, you know, in that one scene I really love too, that I found like really compelling is like, we don't see him actually conversing with a lot of adults. It's like service workers or whatever, but there's the one scene where you're talking to, I guess it's the scuba instructor. And it's so like, man, that scene really just crushes. I found it so compelling because that guy has got like a life that it feels like Callum knows he's never going to have. And then also like has the realization he's never going to have that life. And I found it so sad really watching it. And just like your performance here is so beautiful. Can you talk about that scene? Because I was just like, Yeah, that's like the one time where we get to see him as an adult with another adult, and I found that really interesting.
Well, I feel like the thing with Callum is like it's when he comes up. You're so right. You hit the nail on the head. It's like when he comes up against another adult who he perceives to be stable, he doesn't recognize himself. He's like, I can't see myself. I'm surprised I got to 30. And I think he means that genuinely. He's like, I don't. And it kind of ties into the point that I was making at the start. It's like, I think one of the discoveries around scenes like that and him in general was that like, there's a temptation to like diagnose Callum, or there was a temptation for me to diagnose him at the start. And then I was like, actually, diagnosis isn't important because he isn't diagnosed. He doesn't know what the feeling is. He doesn't know what the end point is, but what he does know is that the feeling is putting him in a position of discomfort and insecurity. So when he's around the scuba instructor who's talking about his family and all of these things, Callum is aware that the performance is to be happy and wow, but he can't relate, he can't get inside conversations sometimes. And I think that's pretty, or I find that pretty upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, and like that kind of carries through the whole movie. I don't want to like keep hammering like, oh man, every one of these scenes is so great. But I know we've talked about it, but like towards the end, obviously, when Sophie goes up to do karaoke, that scene I was like, it was really heartbreaking because she is so expecting him as her father to come up, right, and like be there for her, and he doesn't. So you watch her heartbreak, and the way I think Charlotte films this whole movie is incredible. But you're watching her like heartbreak in like real time. And then we cut back to Callum and you, and it's like you're so upset because you know you can't give her what she needs, I guess, right? Or what she wants. And I just found that again like really really powerful and stuff. And I guess can you talk about doing that sequence as well, for lack of a better question, but I just found that really just an incredible scene, and it just is like so, again, like so powerful, and like the way you guys are underplaying it but getting so much across, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's one of the scenes, like performance wise, as a collective, like between me and Frankie, that I'm probably most proud of, because it's one of the moments of actual tension in the relationship. Like we had to perform like we were within a scene where I'm expressing one thing and it elicits some form of conflict. And I find the pull for Callum in that scene is like, God, I want to be able to stand up and sing this with my daughter, but my body will not let me. I cannot do it. So when Sophie comes to sit down, he goes into dad mode and he's like, well, we can fix this. I can give you singing lessons. And she knows him and she sees him and she knows but she also knows how to hurt him in that moment. She knows how to go, I know the thing that you're insecure about is money, so I'm going to highlight that. And like, I don't know, I find that pain reminds me of my own family. It's like money stresses at home are the thing that like you can really cut people down if you go down that avenue. So yeah, it was pretty. And again, the scene was so fun to film because the scene is so rich, but it's like it hits a. It's just one of those days you go home from work and you're like, that was a good day's work, I think.
That's good. Yeah. You mentioned like doing like dad mode and stuff. Obviously, you're not a dad, and you're playing young father. I know you're younger than Callum is here, and I was like, I was surprised. I guess I don't know if I was surprised, but I was like, oh man, you really nail the relationship of a father and daughter it really well, I thought, and I think it comes across like, and I mean this is a huge compliment, like almost not acting at times, right? It just feels like very natural that you are like very fatherly to her, and the performance is so good. And you mentioned like, I don't know, can you talk about how did you approach that? How did you approach Frankie as like as an acting partner, and then also like knowing the scenes you kind of had to do and getting the feelings across of being a father while obviously not being her father?
Well, I think it's like anything. Or not like anything, but it's like any relationship, be it platonic, familial, romantic, healthy ones are rooted in the same thing. It's like love. It's like it doesn't really matter to me whether, well, yeah, I don't know what it is to be a dad, but I know what it's like to love somebody. I know what it's like to like feel like a territorial animal and want to deliver joy to another human being and be the provider of that. So that was kind of the way that I went down. And then also it just I lucked out with Frankie, man. I was just like, found a friend. It sounds so cheesy, but I was like, that was the thing that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting to go to Turkey and become friends with an 11-year-old. I was expecting to go to Turkey, and I was hoping that this 11-year-old would be able to hold her up her side of the bargain and act. And not only did she do that, she just did pull that off with flying colors. But I think the reason that the chemistry translates is because it exists. There's like there was a chemistry there that gave me an access point that I maybe wasn't expecting. And it kind of opened up my eyes to the fact, like, oh, all relationships are kind of the same. You're looking for love from them. And that can be a father-daughter relationship. It can be a couple. It can be a friendship. But they're all, I think, that's my theory, is that they're all rooted in the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I also think, like, I am not as a father of daughter, not to do that like cliche thing, but as an actual dad, I was like, oh, what you said there is really true, because it's like you are friends with your kid in a way, right? Like you actually like hanging out with your kid, and it's like that's something you don't really realize, I don't think, until you have one. So it's like great. I think that also helps. Like you could tell watching the movie that you are enjoying just being like with Frankie and Sophie, you know what I mean? Like Callum enjoys being with Sophie, and it's like that comes across, and that's like I think what helps it feel more realistic as well. In the end, I think that's really cool.
I think so.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a little more about working with Charlotte and stuff. Obviously, like coming from such a personal place, I guess when you're like, I guess how was that collaboration, and then like how did you feel like the finished film like stands up to like what it was like filming it, I guess?
I think it's really hard to be articulate in a way that is like not just superlatives when I talk about Charlotte. She is, I think it's fair to say that, like, I think we're looking at a filmmaker that's going to be here for the longest time. Like, for this to be her first feature is just kind of astounding. But I feel like I had the privilege of knowing that before the rest of the world did. I was reminded of that when the film came out, because there was no part of working with Charlotte on set that I was like, oh, is this going to be, I felt like it was going to fall down. It was going to be on my shoulders, or it was going to be on Frankie's shoulders, or it was going to be but I never for a second had any doubt that Charlotte didn't know the film better than anybody else, and didn't know how to achieve it better than anybody else. And she's just an incredibly gentle and kind presence on set. And I think that's, or to me, that's key for me to produce good work, or work that I'm proud of. I can't work in a kind of tense, pressurized environment as well. I can do it, but it's not as conducive to good work for me. And I think she just provides an atmosphere and a diligence and a kind of understanding of what actors do, and knows how to put those things in place on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I mean, I think like it's really that the movie is like a testament to that as well. I think you could see that just in filming. I mean, obviously you kind of like broke out with Normal People. I feel like you've racked up in a very short amount of time incredible performances that people are either, you know, a lot of praise for them and stuff. Are you the type of actor who goes back and like watches themselves, and are you picking up things, or do you not? Like, how are you evolving, do you feel, as a performer in like just this last 2 years?
I think I do, especially like I can't watch myself on stage, but I do think at the moment it's important to look at my work back. I think I would quite like to get to the point where I don't feel the need to do that, but like I'm learning as I'm going along. Like, this is my first leading performance out in the world, so I think it's like, of course, I don't think I'm able to do an Adam Driver on it and not like watch my work back, but hopefully I'll get to that position. But I just think it's useful. It's like your kind of expectations versus reality in terms of what you thought a day's work looks like versus the finished product of it, for the time being, is important.
Yeah. And like I mentioned at the top here, you were nominated for the Gotham Awards are actually this evening. We're recording this on a Monday. It's tonight. So congratulations on that nomination. You're obviously a Spirit Award nominee as well. And like you said, this is like your first like lead performance in a film like this, of this caliber. I mean, to get that kind of recognition for this, I would imagine it feels great. But like, or like, I guess, how does that feel, like, basically, to get that kind of recognition so far?
It's a huge honor. It's like this film was made like it was the kind of film that was so small that we didn't even need to announce it until it was going down. Like it wasn't. It is. I don't know. I take great pride in the fact that people still watch small films and have an appetite to go to the theater, and like there is room for films like this to exist and kind of have an impact on people, and for that to, and if nominations and all of those things help an audience come to those films, I take great pride in it. And I also think it's like a huge honor for people to look and engage with your work and deem it worthy of something. I don't know. I think that there's, it obviously has its pitfalls. Like you can't be reliant on that to elicit a pride in your own work, but it helps. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is, I think, one of the movies too, from an awards perspective, where I'm like, people genuinely love it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're genuinely responding to it. It's not like in like a tradition, like I would say, like, you know, like an award, like the kind of movies you would be like an awards bait movie. This is definitely not it. And I think it's like people are like, but it's like the fact that it has gotten so much recognition in such a short amount of time so far is like, I think, a testament to the power of the film and the originality and the performances and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
It's really exciting, for sure.
Yeah. Great chatting with you, Paul Mescal, who stars in Aftersun, in theaters now. It's a great job. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks very much. See you later.